domestic and the social situations, thrashing about and making an almighty mess of the world. Now, since it is a masculine world, women are the ones who can be seen who are playing two roles, whereas the man is really playing one. The woman needs to be feminine in order to be what she is, to be a mother and a wife, and to help build society, bring in the feminine qualities, but she also has to work with the masculine. So maybe some of her demands are correct when it comes right down to it, but certainly those demands cannot then become so extreme or pathological. That sense of entitlement can't become so extreme, where, like a child banging a spoon, if I don't get what I want, then I'm going to attack and burn down the very masculine world where all my supposed benefits are meant to be coming. I mean, that's just completely anarchistic. But this is the dynamic in a woman who has been raised by malignant parents to not admire men, but to envy them. And so it stands to reason that this whole problem can be remedied by intelligent, inquiring, mature parents, that when they bring up their children, they're teaching them to admire men and the masculine world and not to envy it. And that's what my book is really dedicated to, is to be there for parents who are interested in that process, to lay out some of the teachings and the principles psychologically and philosophically that one has to contemplate and deal with and try to apply into their lives and into the world. It's done not to condemn, you see, but to find logical cures to these problems. And that comes back to a definition of the good mother, because the good mother is the one who nurtures correctly and also instructs correctly, and who does seed admiration of the masculine world within her children. The terrible mother instructs incorrectly and may even actively prevent unison between the anima and the animus, and the masculine and the feminine, intruding into the natural development of consciousness, with their own self-conversation and their own pathology. And then, of course, our children will go on, in their professional careers or even in the circle of a family dynamic, to continue this terrible, terrible dysfunction. You'll see it openly when there's just a constant blame game going, and that's riddled with envy rather than admiration. And we have to then be able to stand up and be able to contradict all of that blame game and projection, that doesn't really hold much water at all. And what this means is that one sees the masculine not just externally as it's personified, but as a kind of psychological trait that one needs to engender in their own life. This is the role of the parent. It's not an evil influence. It's only evil when you're recoiling from it. Your own resistance to it demonizes it. But in working with it, walking towards it, and discovering what it is, it has a more friendly face. It can even be a helping hand, as I said, and not something antagonistic. It's a very necessary part of one's own conscious. So the dynamic that I'm talking about is that the whole antipathy, the whole state of affairs, the whole breakdown is based not in a trait of the masculine intruding so much into one's life as these advocates portray that. It's actually their own recoiling from it which sets up the unhealthy dynamic. It's in not seeking for integration, right, that the malignancy is born. Now, of course, these remarks, do they really define most of the women we meet in the world? Well, the answer is yes, they do. But also there's a lot of other women out there who have decided unconsciously to lessen the tension in their lives and to reconcile this dilemma that we're talking about, this tension, by succumbing to the masculine world. But while they do so, their animosity toward it rages within, revealing itself in many tendencies, traits, you see, and even openly hostile attitudes and remarks. What's happening here is that women are identifying with the object of their hate, which again sets up another kind of dynamic of tension within their own being. But that has to be resolved in the outer world as well. But it is done to lessen the tension within and also to simply benefit from the considerable perks provided by that masculine world. That kind of woman may reconcile her or exercise her inner hatred by preferring the company of bad boys, placing thugs and bullies, and criminalistic types and delinquent types above hardworking, decent men. That kind of woman might also not only breed the chivalric child, but a delinquent child, and see him run wild as a kind of a destroyer, because again, inwardly, she's the one who is in antipathy towards the world in which she lives and which benefits her. But basically, these are secretly contemptuous women and demanding, and even on a most basic domestic level, they can make the life of a single man absolute hell and get a big thrill from doing it. Others of this brand are deeply entitled, right? Why? Because they think that they're doing something sacrificial to themselves. They carry this on their shoulder. That even though they're playing the game and going to work and doing all of the things that the rule book sort of demands of them, right? Getting an education and being part of that solar world, they deeply resent it. And they feel that they've had to sacrifice some other part of themselves for doing so. And so they demand more than their logical share of everything. And the man who's caught up in that game then feels that he has to buy his peace, right? In all of the male roles that he is, father, husband, whatever, boss, or just ordinary bloke, he feels that in relationship to women like that, there's a tremendous demand upon him, and that if he's going to have peace and quiet in his life, he's going to have to basically, buy his peace by throwing buns to bears pretty much all of his life. He knows he's dealing with a fifth columnist, somebody who's making him feel guilty at every turn of the road. And historically, of course, this sense of entitlement will increase over time. It's not going to abate. It's not going to get less. And the average modern woman then is born, with a whole laundry list of demands and honey-do lists and a sense of unimaginable superiority. All of it basically born from pathology. And when it comes to the actual question of raising children, women of this regressive type subconsciously resent the ascent to the solar world of their son, but even their daughter as well. But particularly of the son. They don't want to see that son adjust to the masculine solar world. And in extreme cases, this is what gives birth to the smother mother, as it's called, who actively tries to prevent his ascent. And so many of the delinquent children, but also the handicapped children or mentally impaired children or slow children, who just find it difficult, it's because of this constant undermining of a male child's ego, basically, is what's happening. The attempt to stunt his character and his self-confidence. And of course, it can have devastating effects. In fact, this is the origin of the malignant patriarchal consciousness, actually, this whole dynamic. Because some sons do become so regressive and docile, where others caught in this dynamic who've experienced this undermining of their ego will actually recoil from that aspect of the terrible mother. And they can recoil quite violently. And they then go on to cleave more to a phallocentric, androcentric kind of consciousness. And it is this malignant type of male, right, who then builds the malignant patriarchy that feminists turn around and want to point out all of its, flaws, right? Not realizing that it is their dynamic in trying to undermine the ego, right? The tendencies, the masculine solar tendencies of a child. I'm thinking more of sons, but it includes daughters as well. That sets up a dynamic in that child to recoil utterly from that engulfment and that overwhelming sense of intrusion into their growth, their psychological and intellectual growth, and even sometimes physical as well. This takes on all sorts of manifestations. But isn't that son then going to be on guard for any of that type of dynamic again? And might he not be then wanting to go and build a world in which none of that exists? So again, here we see a tremendous symbiosis between the feminine in regards to the thing that later on, in a different, with a different hat on and a different perspective, is being condemned as something flawed and horrendous. And all the time, it's rooted. It's rooted in the soil of the terrible mother.